So basically, what the idea is, the concept is, this is the Treefort. We come up here, we have conversations. So I figured sharing those conversations would be kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
So,
The Treefort.
right, Jamaad. How do you say your last name?
Gould.
Gould. So you're self-proclaimed black nerd, right? You ever seen Stargate?
I have some Stargate.
You know the Goa'uld.
Yes.
Like I never know how to say their name. That's kind of how your last name is for me.
I think that's how my last name is for most people. Like, is it Gold? Like, there's a U in it. Like, it can't be Gold with a U in it.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out.
Like, so it's like, could, good? I'm like, no, it's not good. It's Gould. Like,
No, it's not good. It's like could. It's not good. It could be though.
Yeah, it's spelled like could.
Yeah.
But it's pronounced Gould.
So, Jamaad, tell me about Jamaad. What's Jamaad about? Where's Jamaad? What's some background on Jamaad?
Ooh, so like
It's a big, wide one.
It is, and I feel
but like not everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, but I feel like that's so hard of a question for anybody to answer.
So, local boy.
Who am I? Yeah.
Salisbury guy.
Born and raised right here on the Eastern Shore, Salisbury, Maryland. Bounced back and forth between Salisbury, San Domingo. I say San Domingo rather than Mardella because eventually I want the township to be recognized. For
San Domingo's much cooler than Mardella.
San Domingo's a lot cooler than Mardella.
I moved here from California, and I was like, oh, Del Mar of the sea. That's very quaint. It's a beach town. I get it. No, it's Delaware, Maryland.
Yeah.
And Mardella's just the other end of the road.
And there's the Marydale too. So they just like, wherever you guys meet. Oh no, San Domingo, Salisbury, bounced back and forth from the Parkside High School. The ninth of 14 kids by my mother.
How many? 14?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right. I have 14 in my family, but that's like my aunts and uncles between two grandparents. So my mom's got 7, my dad's got 7. Well, I thought we had a big family.
It's 14 of us.
It's a big family.
Anywhere you go, you're liable to run into one of my siblings and not know they're my sibling. So
you guys look alike?
No.
No.
I have a very unique look.
Yeah,
I'm on my own.
My 2 kids are like unmistakably different. Like I don't know how they're mine, both, but that's another story. So Salisbury guy, went to Parkside, college, no college?
College for sure.
Where'd you go?
Actually, the first boy in my family, man in my family to graduate high school out of my siblings. There's only 4 guys, so 10 women, 4 guys.
10 women.
Yes.
And once again, I thought I had a lot of women in my life.
No, it's 10 of them. I have 10 sisters. My older 2 brothers didn't graduate. I graduated high school, attended Bowie State University for undergrad. Started at Academy of Art University online for grad school. But I got halfway through and I'm just like, I am wasting my money.
Right, this grad school idea, right? This there's this concept that would kind of, it's a little bit political, it's whatever. Like, education is sometimes under attack, sometimes overly celebrated. But there is this idea of over-qualification, over-education. And for myself, I do teaching, I've gone to college. And for myself, like, this idea of, like, let me just go get a master's degree because I should have one.
Right.
And then be overqualified, a bunch in debt. It's a tough line, I think, to have.
And that's where I got halfway through and I'm just like, the books that I'm using for class on a daily, I've had for 3 years.
Okay.
Like, I might not have cracked them open all the time, and that's just me being honest.
Yeah.
But I've had these books.
Are you that book reader that, like, I read 4 books at a time?
I'll glance at things that I need to reference and then put it down.
Yeah.
But I have them for reference purposes.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I have the books, I'm going online. So I've had the software for years. I know how to use the software. So my software classes, I'm like, why am I even taking this class? I'm breezing through it. The composition classes and stuff, I'm looking at it and I'm just like, well, I have the book. I could have did all this by myself. Why am I paying you guys?
It was an MFA? What was the master's?
Yeah, it was an MFA in scoring and composition for visual media.
Oh, wow.
But it's like I'm paying $40,000-$50,000 a year.
It's a lot.
And I'm teaching myself.
Right.
Like, there's no point in that. And I'm using time that I can, put to other things because I am an author as well. And I do also have a job. So it's like I'm spreading myself super thin. Then I need to do something that is better for me. So I was like, let me at least take a break from school. I may still go back. But I always go back to something you told me was like, be true to yourself.
Right.
And I was just like, I'm not right now.
Right.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And
right.
it's not what Jamaad is doing,
and,
supposed to do.
and that's all in flux, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this like what we're supposed to be doing. There's this whole idea that our parents and grandparents grew up with. That was like, you do the right things, you make all the right decisions, you buy a house, you
And
get a
life
job, you
goes
put money in the
great.
bank, and everything's. And I think that's true for a previous generation. I don't know how well that's going to last into the future.
I don't think it's lasting now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's lasting at all. Millennials are broke, we're in debt. Like everybody's like a lot of older generations are like, you guys just complain about a lot. I was like, well, the wealth disparity is crazy right now. The
Right.
highest it's been since the French Revolution for any modern Western country.
Right.
And I'm just like, we have debt crazy. Like we can't pay off our student loans. I've seen shows and documentaries and stuff of people like they will pawn their clothes,
Wow. That's
to pay off their student loan a month.
because you can't escape it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I don't think a lot of people know that. So housing crisis and structured finance, what that means, like when people talk about structured finance and without watching The Big Short and really like having economics lessons, basically the idea is, Michael Jackson took his music catalog, the promise of what he could make on the future sales of Thriller. He sold to like the Paul McCartney or something. I don't know if he even died with his rights, but they'd give him a big chunk of money. Like that was leveraging, right? So he's leveraging his future capital. And so they have all these kind of, that was the housing crisis. So they had the debt arms, and they'd take your mortgage and they'd sell it to me because I wanted to make 4% profit on the
Right.
return. And then the thing tanks. Well, you could walk away from houses. That's
Yeah.
what they didn't account for. Student loans you can't walk away from.
Can't walk away at all. And now that Sally Mae is no longer government regulated, she's like, well,
Stuck.
we'll sue you if you don't pay us.
Take you to jail.
Yeah.
Right. I fear this day that like a lot of times, having had some experience with the prison system, not necessarily as an inmate, but you see a lot of people that like struggle for having to go to treatment, having to pay for treatment, and like having to pay for things that they had from the commissary while they were in prison, like running debt. Like when you see people having jobs, right, the amount of money they actually take home, and so you get a lot of this rhetoric like, oh, they go to jail, they get a job, they get whatever, and it's like, I think it's probably screwing people just as much as anything else. This idea of debt.
Yeah. And we live in it. Like we immerse ourselves in it. We're so eager, and I myself included. I'm guilty of it as well. I was so eager. Like I got my first car from a dealership. I didn't really care about my interest rate or anything. Like the car I was driving was crap. Like it was bound to break apart and fall, like break down and be done any day. So I was like, let me have it. It's $23,000 there. I already have my student loans. Then I started going to grad school. Then I get more credit cards because I need to help my credit score get back up from where I opened it. And I'm just like digging myself and immersing myself in more and more debt. And I'm just have a degree I'm not really using. And I'm just like, I could have done something else with that time, that money, my life. And like society tells us, you said, like there's this old school mentality of like, you do this, this, and this, and you'll be
invest in yourself.
And it's not working like that. Like so many people. There's so many trade jobs out there. Schools aren't pushing trades. They're like, yeah, you need to go to a 4-year institution.
I have questions about this, right? So this trade thing. I worked a trade. I've sunsetted my trade. I went to college. I left college. I was in a union, so I got lots of great training. Lots of hand-on experience. I had somebody to go about when my boss didn't want to contribute to my retirement, medical care, the whole 9 yards, and it was fantastic. But 15 years into that, 10 years into that, I'm like, I don't know. And we were in D.C., so Virginia was right next door. It's a right-to-work state. Like you're always competing for the work in Virginia. It was this struggle. And so like the idea of trades, do you think it's we were talking about it earlier. Like you go to Chrisfield and like somebody's mom was like shucking oysters all day. Like, can you imagine the carpal tunnel, the like repetitive work and labor?
Stuck like that.
So when you say manufacturing, because I'm not like, I think there is a future. I think there's a future to be built, and that's going to require some level of manufacturing. Do you think when you say trades and stuff like that, do you think it's the traditional class that we're thinking about, or do you think it's something different?
I think it can be both. Like I don't think trades like carpentry are ever going to die out.
Right.
Plumbing, like electrical work.
There'll be some form of it.
There's going to be some form of it as long as there's mankind. But I think there's other trades out there, just as far as especially with manufacturing, building a computer.
Right.
or manufacturing machines that can help create other things. There's always going to be some form of trade that we need to take a real look at and say, can we educate our population to fill these jobs? Because right now we're not. You know?
And I think there's going to be like a certain design, like a certain need, whatever the future is. The one thing I get nervous about, like I was reading a book lately, and it's talking about Detroit, and it was like Detroit like manufactured its own demise, like they built the machines that took their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of me that like without that social extra boost, without having something where we're really focused on an educational component, like I get nervous of saying like, well, let's push trades, and then you have some guy who's 20 years into the trade of HVAC and he can't bend over anymore. He's got carpal tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
and, no benefits, no health insurance.
Yeah.
I think there's this like education component.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
maybe we're not good learners right now.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be it for everybody, but maybe later you get it. You
And
know.
maybe you can go back, but I think it takes both. You definitely need people to get their bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and PhDs. Where there'll never be a point where we're not going to need them.
So it's not an either or. It's not
Yeah,
either or.
it's both have to work cohesively together.
Right.
You're going to need the educators. You're going to need educated people as far as education being relative to what you're talking about. But why would we ever stop studying physics? Why would we ever stop trying to travel places? And you can't do these things without going to school and getting those type of degrees. Why would we ever
Right.
not need lawyers or judges or
Right.
things that require that higher level of education? But again, when are we ever going to stop building houses?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I saw 3D printed like cement houses, so maybe. I always hope.
But
there's,
who
like,
built the 3D printer?
Yeah, a robot is what I'm hoping. I hope the answer is it's a robot and we get like universal basic income. That's like what I want.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a point that we're going to have to think about that.
There's just a lot of things that I've been looking at. We're talking about like zero marginal cost, right? And so like the price of everything is just plummeting, right?
Mhm.
So you get your cell phone, and yeah, you pay a lot for it, but you get 4K camera, and it's got pictures and video, and it has a microphone, and you can make music, and you have apps and video
So
games.
you really have
and
like 10 things.
you have 10 things in there that all used to be super expensive.
Mhm.
GPS, right? You used to buy a Garmin and subscribe to a service,
Every day.
and now it's like you've
Yeah.
got your GPS is free.
Yeah.
And so I wonder about like as the cost of everything approaches zero marginal cost, electricity will become cheaper, services will become cheaper. I kind of wonder what this direction is going to look like, and I think that there's we have to have this like educational component. I think we
Yeah.
should really recommit to this lifelong learning, model where like, yeah, okay, let's get some trades, let's get some people working. Talk to me about that a little bit, right? So supposedly we're running really good, right?
Mhm.
Supposedly the economy's humming. Stock market's up, unemployment is low. What's your spin on that? What's your thoughts on that? Let me think about that. Is that how you feel every day?
What that?
Like we're just killing the game right now. People
No.
got money.
No.
No.
I believe
Right.
we're so, as a country,
Right.
we're so far behind the eight ball. Like as far as like other Western industrialized nations go, we're so far behind the eight ball. You look at universal health care, which has been a big topic for like the last 6-7 years.
It's been longer than that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we were pushing for it in the 90s, to be
Yeah.
honest. It never caught. Like a lot of the things that are happening now,
Are just now catching fire.
we've
from
been
before.
pushing, and
Yeah.
they just weren't. They were like, no way, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah, and now it's like
They did it in Europe.
we need to do it. Yeah, like they've been doing it in Europe for years, and we're just like it'll never happen. Or
Right.
like our education system. In the 70s we were number one. We're number one in the world. We're
Right.
what, number 28 now?
Yeah, I don't know where we
We
fall.
keep
It's not
dropping,
great though.
yeah, and we keep dropping because we're still using 70s tactics instead of looking and saying, "Oh, this works really well." Well, and I'm thinking like America is supposed to be like the most competitive, fiercest nation,
Right.
the greatest nation on the face of the planet. Well, shouldn't you strive to be number one in everything, especially in educating your population?
Yeah.
Or making sure that your population lives long so they can
Yeah.
contribute. to
Well, that was. I
society.
mean, that was a big part. Like I was obviously older, so that was a big thing that went along with Reaganomics. Was
Yeah.
like, we're gonna take all the, we're gonna do the trickle down and all
Doesn't
that
work.
and the Cold War and everything else, but we'll give you a healthy dose of Rambo and Top Gun and like make you really amped about being American, and then we'll have the Olympics and Carl Lewis will show up and win all these gold medals
Yeah.
and so like we crushed, and Russia didn't even participate because the Soviet Union was having their struggles. But there was this, accompanied along with that. At least there was this kind of feeling, and I almost feel like now they're just kind of giving it to you raw. They're like, yeah, we're just gonna kind of split the thing up a little bit. We're gonna take some money over here, and this idea that we'll really push money down. I just don't see it in everyday practice.
It trickle down economics is great in theory. It's horrible in practice. It's the same thing as like gentrification. Gentrification in theory
Right.
is beautiful.
Yeah.
Gentrification in practice, it's racism. Like,
Yeah.
like they just don't work how we on paper are supposed to work.
Right. So U Street in DC, we did some of the original theater. Theater is usually one of the things, like the first things to go into a gentrifying neighborhood, the arts, right? And so they had like the AIDS clinic, they had the historical black theater, they had a bunch of Somali and Ethiopian grocery stores and restaurants and stuff like that. And then they started putting in theaters, and then the metro came in, and then lots of other restaurants, and then the chains, and then the condos. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I certainly feel a little safer. And that might even be just its own perception. But there is a lot of character I find is missing.
Yeah.
It's like every other town center. It's like a town center within a city.
Yeah.
They did it with the MCI Center too. When you first went to it used to be the MCI Center, Verizon Center. I don't even know what it is now.
It's Verizon Center.
Used to, like I was early first seasons going down and watching the Wiz play when they first were from the Bullets to the Wizards.
Yeah.
And that was in a kind of a crap neighborhood, in terms of forgotten, lots of abandoned spaces, old buildings. And there was Chinatown and some other things that were around there that made it really amazing. And now it's like, the value of real estate's as high as Manhattan. And so I feel like the cities, you almost can't afford to go there.
Yeah.
Which
then becomes a real problem. You see less privileged or people of a lower socioeconomic standard, they don't travel. They don't leave home.
Right.
And it's like, it's not because they don't want to.
Can't
They
afford
can
it.
afford to leave home.
Right. Yeah, DC's 2.5 hours, and
Yeah.
you spend $200 before you even get a room.
You get gas. By the time you spend your gas and toll, and the toll's not even high, but do you have a car, a reliable enough vehicle to get over there?
Yeah.
Do you have the money to put in your gas tank and still get to work, back and forth to work every day? Do you have the money to go out to do whatever it is that you're going there to do in the first place? Like,
I don't think the majority of people really do.
yeah. And that's only 2.5
regularly.
hours. Yeah.
And it used to be, I used to my one of my best friends was in art school in Philly, and so I gave him a key for my house, and I had a key for his house. And summertime he'd come to the beach, and we'd go up and hang out in Philly and hang out, and you could live there. Like you could maybe it was 2 or 3 people to an apartment, but at least you could live there. You could and I don't see that nearly as much, and it saddens me. What do you think about for us here?
On East Shore?
Like with the idea of like we're doing tons of downtown stuff, right? We're doing tons, and without really like putting anybody on blast, because I love the effort, right?
Yeah.
I love that we're trying some things, but what are some of your fears going forward with what happens to our communities here?
My biggest thing, because I love what's happening downtown turning into arts, because I love the arts. My biggest fear is that it's not going to be diversified art in this sector. That's number one. Like, it's all going to be arts for the high class, because the property value and everything is going to continue to go up.
Yeah, I think
more
this
people
is-
want to be here.
I think it's already the most expensive rentals
It is.
in town.
The second thing it is even bigger fear to me, is that it expand, and the closest area is the west side,
And they get gobbled up.
and they get gobbled up again because they've already destroyed Georgetown to build Route 50 through there.
So tell me what do you know about George? Like I've been reading a couple books lately that are more about our history. Like I've always been like, the grandiose history, like the big world stuff, the big philosophers, the big civil rights people, right? That kind of stuff, the big historical figures. And I'm now recently starting to have a lot more love for that kind of local flair, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot about that. Do you know? What do you know about?
I only know a little about Georgetown because there's not. I haven't found, and I'm not gonna say there's not a lot out there, but I haven't found personally.
Like
And
a
I might not have
repository.
looked about enough, maybe. I just haven't looked enough. I know there's some people around that still know a lot about it, but there's just not a lot out there that I've seen that tells a story. But it was the black neighborhood in the city when it was segregated, but I forgot when it was. but they cut straight through it. Boom, we're putting a highway here. Everybody go away.
Right.
You know?
And that's, I mean, that's true of a lot of places,
Yeah.
right? There was, there was like flight from the cities, period. Not
Yeah.
just white flight, not just, successful black flight, but there was just flight out of the cities in sprawl. Everybody loved the idea of the suburbs and the big yard. But yeah, you don't see these like, you go certain places and you get this real feel for this historic districts. And I don't know that we have that real feel.
Yeah, I mean, Chipman, I think Chipman Cultural Center has a historic feel to it. Definitely, the area over here by Isabella Street, that area, I forget what it's called, but that area has a historic feel to it. But other than that, you don't really get that. And even when you go to that area by Isabella, a lot of it can be taken as our dark history.
Right.
Because a lot of those people were slave owners. A lot of those, like the Poplar Hill Mansion, that there's a lot of history there.
Yeah, I went on a tour there. If you haven't gone through there, it's a pretty good it gives you a good idea of what it looks like. It was this house on the hill, and I lived on Poplar Hill for a number of years. I had an apartment over there. One of the big houses had been split up, and we had the whole first floor, and somebody else lived upstairs. And I saw it all the time, and I didn't know anything about it. And I went on a tour, and it talked about there's a Sarah, I think, is it Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah, the curator.
She catches up there's the one slave that caught on fire taking care of the master's kids, and it's and it looks out over the whole valley of the because it's one of the higher spots.
Yeah.
And it really put into perspective for me kind of what some of our history is and our heritage is. And it's kind of, I don't know that they'll get that one. I don't know if they'll get the historic parts.
Yeah.
I think we'll protect that. But I do worry about some of the flair and charm of some of these neighborhoods. You go to other places, right? And while they may not be the greatest thing in the world right now, there's still neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And you go to Charlottesville or places like that, and you look around places where they've had this really great downtown core development, and all these neighborhoods are just nobody can, they're super expensive.
Yeah, nobody can afford it. I try to stay in San Francisco. The whole city of San Francisco is
It's ridiculous.
high, but their downtown is a 1-bedroom studio apartment. I want to say $2,700 a month. Like, who pays for this?
Right.
This is a studio.
Right. So they had the I was out there and they were talking about if they see you with the Google glasses, that was they'd chase you down. The Google guys came in and would come in for 2 or 3 years and chase everybody out. So you're running, right?
Yeah.
You're running for office. All these kinds of things that we're talking about, that's kind of what driving you. What's the idea behind that? What on earth were you thinking?
It's a lot. It really was a lot, but to make it simple, I don't want to be that angry black guy.
Okay.
Or that angry young kid.
Right. The millennial.
Yeah.
The angry millennial. You got a couple.
Yeah. I'm 26. Actually, my birthday is a week from today.
Right.
So I'll be 27 next week. So I'm a millennial. I'm relatively, I think I'm still young, I'm young in my eyes.
You're young than me too.
I'm a young black man. And when I look at how decisions are made, we don't have a voice there.
Right.
And then I grew up in poverty, or if not below the poverty line, right at the poverty line. And when I look at how the council is constructed, people that are at that level don't have a voice there.
Right. So it's not just race, right? It's
a socio-economic, racial thing. It's everything together, because they're not being properly represented. So when you vote on these issues that affect everybody, who's speaking up for all these people? And these people make up the vast majority of the county.
Yeah,
but they don't have a voice in it.
I'd say that's probably a real number.
And it's a microcosm of our country.
Right.
The vast majority of people don't really have a voice, because we have all this money dumped into our politicians on a larger level, and they're listening to who's going to give me the most cash. We have this capitalistic idea where your money is worth more than these people are actually going to vote for me. And a lot of people aren't paying attention to politics. And,
right.
and that's
We've
just
historically been bad at that.
and that's just the way it is. And but we need to stop just accepting that that's just how it is. Step up and figure out how are we going to fix it here going forward. And I think a big part of fixing that, and a big part of why I ran, is to lead by example.
Right. So there's a lot of folks that you hear this like, well, just shut up and do something about it,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
You hear that all the time. What's the reception been now that you've shut up and decided to do something about it?
uh,
Stop
mostly
complaining,
positive.
right?
It's mostly positive, but I tend to surround myself with positive people. So when I had the idea of running, people were like, "Just file, just do it, just do it." And I was like, "Let me think about this because it's a big life decision.
Sure it is.
I'm still young. Like, I still want to be an artist. Like, let me think about it for a second here." But I just kept going through it in my head over and over. I'm just like, this doesn't take away from your art. You can still
Right.
be an artist.
Right.
This doesn't take away from anything that you want to do. In fact, this is along the lines of what you want to do. When I graduated college 3.5 years ago now, I decided to stay here. I had a job lined up for me at my university. They said, Jamaad, just apply. Because I was their student government president. Everybody in the administration building knew who I was. Like, everybody loved me. There were 2 or 3 departments I could have worked in. Point blank, fresh out of college, salary position, wouldn't have to pay for grad school, like 32,000 a year.
Right.
Not bad, you know.
And that's in Baltimore, right?
It would have been in PG County.
PG.
Uh, I was like, I don't want to do that. I had a girlfriend up there. We were planning to get married and everything. I said, I don't want to move back to PG. I want to stay home. She's like, why? Why would you want to? She's from Snow Hill. And she's like, why would you want to stay there? Like,
Because Prince
never
George's
comes
is
back.
different, right?
Yeah, it's very different.
It's
It's very
different.
diverse. And
I worked in Prince George's
Yeah.
County for about a decade.
I mean, I love PG,
Yeah.
but it's not home. I
Right.
said, I see so many issues here, and I know I can be part of a solution here. So I'm going to stay. We ended up splitting just because of that, you know.
Wow.
Because I wanted to stay here. I wasn't, you know, at the time I wasn't willing to do a long distance thing. She wasn't willing to do it, so we went our separate ways. But I felt it was more important to stay here and help my own community. And I got away from that for a while.
And what's the draw? Why? Like, why? Is it because family's here? Is it like what is the draw to say, I'm gonna go back home. I could go anywhere I want. I've got a job lined up. I want to go home, and then to go home and get involved. What was the motivation there?
I just saw it. I just saw everything around me. I was like, this hasn't changed. And I was like 22 or 24 at the time. 23, 24, somewhere around there. And I'm just like, nothing's changed since I was a little kid. Like, there's still the same issues
Right.
from when I was a child. I seen positive growth as far as like the downtown area. I seen what the mayor and various other people are trying to do, but I said it's not enough. It's not enough coming from. It has to come from everywhere. It can never just be one source. And I was like, I gotta stay. It was just a burning feeling in me, like, you have to stay here. This is where you're meant to be. And like, it wasn't easy. Like, I went through some really dark times because of that. Like, my grandmother had died a couple years prior to me graduating. I never really dealt with it. I went through a huge depression phase. Um, Thought about suicide. I had a suicide attempt where
Wow,
my
for
whole
real?
plan was to drive my car into a tree, 100
Wow.
miles an hour. But I could never bring myself to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I had bouts with depression, right? Even where I had to get checked in when I was going through some real personal issues. And even when you're not necessarily, they kept asking you, are you suicidal? Are you suicidal? You said, I'm like, now that
No,
you've asked
fine,
me,
I'm fine.
now that you've asked me 15 times, maybe I don't know. I'm in a bad place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all tough stuff.
Yeah.
And so you're an outlier, even though you're an insider.
Mhm.
Do you find yourself as an outlier, like a disruptor, or do you feel like how do you see what your role is
Oh, I love it.
in
I
terms
love
of
being an outsider because there's first off, I like proving people wrong. So
Right.
now there's this doubt. You're not this. You're not that. This is how it's supposed to be. We've done how it's supposed to be for so long,
Yeah, we've been doing that.
and nothing is working to move forward.
Right.
So why not come with an outside idea? So one, I like proving people wrong. Two, it gets other people up in arms, and not to just like a protesting up in arms, but like he can do that. Why can't I do that?
Right.
You know, people underestimate what what the feeling people get when you see somebody that is similar to you do something that you thought you could never do.
Right.
Like,
And I think I've found all the things that I had self doubt about doing.
mm-hmm.
When I actually did them, I was like celebrated. Like, oh my God, I wanted to do that my whole life.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've been figuring out like whether I should do this or not, and been super self-conscious about whether I should even do this or not, and then you make these decisions and you dive head on into it. So you find that other people are being inspired.
Yeah.
Right. You feel like, have you been doing, I know that you guys did an event where you did, like, getting people registered. I went and saw a concert last night. And it's David Byrne, one of my favorites, and I hadn't seen him, and through the process, it's only his fourth show of the tour. He's got a new album, and on part of his tour, he's going to have a table to register people to vote right there.
That's dope.
So do you have, like, as a part of your campaign, win, lose, or draw, like, getting people involved, is that a huge part of what you're trying to do?
It is, because the more people are actually involved, the more you're forced to listen to what they're saying. So one of the things I want to do, one of the things I'm doing, when I go canvassing to talk about myself, a lot of times people are like, well, you have to go to the registered voters. You have to go to the registered voters. Why can't I register people as I'm going knock on doors? Why can't I just go talk to people in the community and see, how they feel?
So it's like, what's your approach? Like, your approach is like, hey, look, I'm Jamaad.
Yeah.
Like, whether you vote for me or not. Yeah. Like, let's talk about what it is. Have you registered? Vote for somebody.
Because even if I don't get that person to vote this election, I may get them to vote next election. Or I may get them to pay attention. Or I may get them to say, you know what? There's somebody out there that has my best interest in heart and wants to gain nothing from it. So let me look at him and see what he's really about. And that may lead to a vote, eventually down the road. I just want to be sure that I'm not doing people a disservice.
Right.
Because that's what I feel like a lot of people have been doing when these positions. They're just doing people a disservice. They're just like, you're in you sell real estate and you own a yacht and you, like, come on guys, let's have a party together. But it's a private party.
Right.
I'm inviting everybody. Like, come out with me. Come do the two-step real quick. We're going to do the hustle. We're going to do the cha-cha slow. We're going to do all the line dances. Like, we're going to listen to some good soulful music. Going to eat some good food. We're going to have a good time. You're going to laugh. You might shed a tear or two. You're going to meet some people that you probably never thought you feel comfortable around.
Do you think that that's a big central tenet to what you're doing is inclusivity?
Absolutely.
Is that the driving force?
I wouldn't say it's the driving force, but it is a driving force. Because you have to. I'm not shy about this. I'm a Black Lives Matter supporter. I'm into Pan-Africanism. Like, I look at that and I say, there's so much that the Black community can do, right here for ourselves, and this is any community. So when I'm talking about the reservations or the East Side off Church Street, and any Black community, there's a lot that we can do ourselves, but there's also a lot that we can't do ourselves.
Right.
Or that why would we hold this to ourselves if it can be something that can be used for the betterment of all of society,
Right. So I think it's funny because I had a bunch of friends and their families were diplomats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had lots of conversations, and we talk about Pan-Africanism, and that comes out of the independence movement in Africa and kind of this, trying to figure out what to do with the diaspora, right? So people spread all over the corners of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And there was lots of things that were happening within Africa towards African Union. They looked at incorporating the Caribbean into that, and there was
Haiti's not part of it.
Haiti's not part of it. So I think Trinidad built the airport in Kingston, like in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Desalinization plants, and so there is this cooperative thing. And while there has been corruption in some of those things, I think it's just a matter of. I think we're looking for these solutions to be like, well, it's been 50 years, it's been 60 years, it's been 100 years, it's been 150. Like, this was put in place for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you frame it in that Pan-African context, which I don't know that everybody's hip to, but that whole like Pan-African context on a local level. It never. I like.
But it can be done, and it's not. It's hard. It's not. It's never gonna be easy. I'll never say that it's easy, but it's easy at the same time. Like it on paper, it's easy. You know, the actual act of doing it is gonna be a lot more difficult. But the money's here. 'Cause, without a shadow of doubt, we're still a capitalistic society. We're
Right.
gonna need the funds, but the money is here. The people that want to do it are here, but we have to get that to work cohesively, and we have to have open arms. We can't do it and then be like, no, you guys can't come. This is ours. Like that's what was done to us. So why would you want to do that to anybody else? I wouldn't you want to be like, we didn't like it when it was done to us, so we're gonna change that narrative, and now with open arms, come on.
Right, so it's not a revenge thing, right?
No.
So like this big scary, right, like pro-black, Pan-Africanism, Black Lives Matter. There's this big connotation that goes with it that means that that's also attached to anti-white. Talk to me about
Yeah.
that a little bit. How does that make sense? Why do people feel like those two things are a necessity? Is it guilt? Is it
You know,
like fear? Do you think it's fear? Like I feel like this is going to be revisited on me, and I didn't even have anything to do with this. Is that all part of it?
I honestly,
You ever think about that part?
I've thought about it, but I don't know definitively. I don't have a good answer for it. I would think some of it is fear, because but when you hear talks, it's always from white nationalists. So they're afraid that the white race is going to
The
be
extreme end of
yeah,
that.
and of course you're going to have extreme on the other end. Of course, there's going to be like kill them all, and they did it to us. It's like, but we didn't like it.
Right.
So, but for the most part, you're going to have most people right in that sweet spot that are like, okay, we don't have a problem with you guys. You don't really have a problem with us.
We're just pushing our
Yeah,
own.
it's just
We're looking after what we need to do to catch up.
yeah. And that's really all it is. Is we're behind. The black dollar circulates in the black community one time,
One
and then it
time.
leaves. There is no other ethnic group where the dollar circulates one time. Everybody else circles. I think the Latin community or Hispanic community is the closest, and it still circulates there. I think like 5 times.
And that's what it's like. Build on that. Tell me what that means. So like
So
when you say it circulates one time before it leaves the community, is that there's just not a lack? Is there a lack of places for it to go? Is it a loyalty? Is it all of the above? What
it's
does that mean? What does that
it's a
circulation thing mean?
so the dollar circulation is, if you look at, I'll use the Asian community for example, because theirs circulates the most. I think it's around 16 times. Before that, say I have a dollar, I spend it at a local store. Before that dollar leaves, the dollar will leave that store. Say it goes to somebody else's change. Boom, they take it to another store, and it's going through the community. So it's going to exchange hands 16 times before it ever leaves that community.
Wow.
The black dollar exchanges hands and then it's gone. But because it's exchanged hands in the community can continue to build off this money. When it
Right.
just leaves the community, there's no building off of it. So when the black dollar leaves so quickly, there's no way for it to, help the community out. And there's a lot of reasons. There's still a slave mentality in a lot of people, and people don't like to talk about it. We're like, oh, slavery's old. In the grand scheme of things, slavery's not that
No.
long.
No.
It's not that offset.
No, whenever somebody says that, right? So I have a friend of mine. He's from Trinidad. He's an Indian guy. He's a Muslim guy. So he's got like all these things like going for him.
Yeah.
And he was his grandfather, right? So he's probably 10 years older than me. His
Mhm.
grandfather was traded through Annapolis, right? So that like his grandfather died in the 70s, in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was indentured, right? It was a different form, but at the same time, it was
It's
still
slavery.
like, so you had, you know, you had these different levels and different applications. And so sometimes they'd end this form.
Yeah.
I was reading a book last night and it talked about the Middle Passage, and everybody, I don't know about everybody, but a lot of people are familiar with the Middle Passage
Right.
and all the tragedy and all the people that died and all of the people that were brought, basically from Brazil and Africa, that kind of Middle Passage, and then from there out, right? And places like Annapolis, places like Virginia. But at the same time, one of the things that I was reading about is after we kind of outlawed the importation of slaves, there was this other Middle Passage that was about similar distance, from the north after the Louisiana Purchase, and it was like this whole other Middle Passage, right? And so there was this whole other idea of like it shifted, right? So we weren't bringing in African slaves; we were actually looking at colonization at that point.
And we're breeding.
Because the rest of and breeding slaves, right? So the rest of Europe is like consuming Africa and all of its resources and all of its people and planting their flags all over the place. We wanted a shot, and we played around with the ideas of sending folks back, and got the Louisiana Purchase after Haiti, and it's like so much to it,
Yeah.
right? There's so much to it. It's not. It was years and years in the making, and it was all encompassing, right? It was science, it was justification,
Yeah.
it was the history and the way it was taught, and all of those things really created this structure where we look at lots of things, and it's I try to read and stuff, and I feel like I'm pretty well versed, as well as I can be, but there's still so much to learn.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like it's this dead issue.
And I don't think anybody's going to have all the, even experts, I don't think even the experts know everything there is to know about what happened in slavery. And that wasn't that long ago. And you can't expect a group of people to go through all that, go through Jim Crow, and then go through redlining and standardized testing and, segregation in school, and go through all that and then be like, you guys are fine. Like, it's okay.
Yeah,
it doesn't
okay.
work that way.
Just pick, some of the things I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize, like the idea of police brutality, right? And I'm not trying to say that it's like this ubiquitous everywhere thing that all police are horrible, and by any means, I love that. I love
for sure
the people that make that commitment. But the idea that I'm speaking about is like, well, why don't you just behave? Why don't you just not become, like there's no confrontation? That's actually was actually a way that some abolitionists tried to fight slavery. Like if you just behave, if you just be the best you can be, the most educated, learn the most poetry, and that was a carryover directly from that. Like that, the good, be good.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's no margin, right? Is that part of this whole thing?
Because that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all.
Like nobody can be their best.
Yeah, like I wear suits, I don't dress like a thug for lack of a better term, because I think it's just hip hop culture being misinterpreted. I don't, I articulate myself. I've been to college. I get called a nigger almost daily.
Wow.
Like it doesn't
Wow.
that doesn't stop anything. At the end of the day, I've been a black male for almost 27 years now. Like that's what I've been consistently my entire life. Nothing can change that. So when you think about that, like it doesn't matter your socioeconomic standard. LeBron had niggers scraping on his house.
Right.
LeBron just
Shut
sent
up and dribble.
1,100 kids.
Shut up and dribble, right?
Yeah, to college. This man took his best friends from straight out of high school, took his friends and said, hey, here's what our plan, guys. You guys are going to be my agents. You're going to be my investor. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. I'll pay for your school. Go. Boom. His friends are his business partners.
And so, I don't know that I've ever even heard that story.
Why is it not up there? Raised by a single mother in the ghetto.
Right.
Just had an extreme passion and talent for playing basketball. But he flipped it. He's the only person to ever get a Nike lifetime deal over worth $1 billion. So although he's not a billionaire, Nike has a lifetime contract with him.
Wow.
He will be eating off them until he dies.
So the idea when we talk about, you talk about representation, you talk about being in front of the public eye, doing all those things. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about like there's things and opportunities. Like let's look after some of our own things. It's not about like we don't care about your issues.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like
it's just this is what we're going through. This is what we need to take care of.
It's if poor black people were to come up in the world, poor white people would come up as well. Because we're still grouped in that same socioeconomic,
right.
Class. One is going to help the other, and I've seen all the time where race goes out the window because we don't, because either side doesn't have anything. And if you don't decide to say, okay, let's forget the race, we're poor. How can we help each other?
Right.
Why? Like, what are you gaining from that?
I think
And that's a slave mentality too. On the other side.
Yeah, I think for me, race was always like, if anything, maybe an initial like figure this out who we are, what we're dealing with here. But then like the problems of friendships and relationships and coworkers were always much bigger than that. Might be an initial barrier or initial like, oh, this is weird, or oh, I like this. But it seems like you're right. Like it's kind of, while it seems so huge, when it comes down to life,
Yeah.
we all dig into like how we're gonna eat, how we're gonna keep the lights on, how we're gonna keep heat in the house. How am I gonna get my kids? I was looking at retirement the other day, right? So, I started thinking about like what are my choices, what are my investments, what kind of decisions that I'm making, and for me with every advantage or privilege, the actual idea of retirement scares the hell out of me, because if I retire at 65 and I live to 85, which my grandparents had that kind of longevity. They made it that far. That's not an unrealistic thing, especially with I probably am taking better care of myself than they did at this point in life. Maybe there'll be some advancement. So if I live that 20 years and I want to live fairly modestly on $30,000 a year, right? That's $600,000.
Do you have $600,000?
I do not.
And people.
And that's before any call. That's before like
anything. So people have to. I tell people this all the time, because I tell people I'm going to retire when I'm 40. They look at me like, what? How are you going to retire when 40? I said, I'm going to have enough money to retire when I'm 40, or I will have the ability to choose when I work. And that's just what I tell myself, because I refuse to spend the vast majority of my life working for someone else, 9 to 5. When they say clock in, I clock in. When they say clock out, I clock out. And then I go to retire at 65. And I don't have enough money to live, essentially, because that's what it boils down to. Retirement is not an age. Retirement is a bank account.
Right.
How much do I have enough money to stay alive for the rest of my life?
If I stop working. Right.
Yeah, and that's so crazy. But it just goes back to community helping each other. If there were more, banks like to give loans to people that have money.
That's true.
Yeah. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and there's lots of reasons.
Yeah,
it can be risk.
It's less risk,
right,
far less risk. But some of the greatest ideas may come out of a poor person's mouth, but they don't have the capital, or they don't have any financial backers or things of that nature. So they never get a loan. So it just stays there and it dies. But that person could have been a multimillionaire, They could have gotten enough money to help out their whole community.
Right, and historically that's happened.
Yeah.
Right, whether it's inventions, whether it's innovation, literature, art, right? That's not far-fetched to believe. Could be the case.
But there's no. And I understand the business side, the business aspect of it. But I know one of my goals is, and like I said, I am going to retire when I'm 40, and I'm going to say I am. Like, I don't believe in I want to. I am.
Like, so no
speak
halfway.
things into existence. Yeah, there is no halfway. It's
right.
Either it's going to happen. I'm not even going to say it is or it isn't. It's going to happen. And one of the things I'm going to do, is invest in people. Because banks won't take the risk. But eventually, if we want to help people better their socioeconomic status, we're going to have to invest in people rather than investing in businesses.
Yeah, and there's, I think that it feels to me like we talked about the safe decisions and all of that, right? Like, if I do this and I show up and I work and I punch in and I'm never late and everything's perfect and I have the right education and I meet the right person in my life, right, then all these things will work out. But more and more, that's like on this cycle of, like, more and more every day you hear about, like, wow, we're not just exporting jobs that are manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
We've done that, right? We certainly don't want necessarily like fire up the coal mines again or
Yeah.
like put kids in the textile mills, right?
Some people might want to.
Some
Some
people
people.
might. I think that's right. But we've also like we're getting rid of accounting jobs. Like major pieces of investment are being done by software, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's all these very real concerns, and I think investing in people, and it's going to be a very different
Style of investment.
thing that we start to look at as what actually has importance.
Yeah.
There's also with that, you're an artist, intellectual property, right? So what is if these jobs aren't necessarily if this kind of future is automation and we struggle with some of these things, like we look at human capital and intellectual property, but intellectual property is one of the things that's been most impacted by the modern economy, whether it's downloading movies, figuring out what they're doing, television, all this flux, art. How do you get paid for a painting? How do you get paid? What are your thoughts on the future of art as a person that wants to create?
That's tough.
It's a lot.
That's really tough because it's hard to regulate. Like, how do you regulate that? Like, it's super difficult to regulate that because there's always going to be somebody that knows how to get around that. Especially when it comes to mediums such as TV, music.
As soon as
You know,
it's digital, it's
Yeah, it's up.
you
know?
can duplicate it.
And like I've published a book. It's hard for you to copy that, that because it's paper. You have to physically obtain a copy. I mean, a copy of it and make copies of it. So that's more difficult. But it's also an e-reader version. I'm pretty sure somebody can hack into it. So I don't think we're ever going to solve the problem, or we're ever going to get away from people finding that loophole. But at the same time, art is not just what people create. Art's also the experience. Like, you can rent a movie that comes out in the theaters on a lot of different platforms and watch it at your house. Do you not like to go to the movies?
No, I'm a buff.
Yeah, like it's an experience.
Right,
Like,
I'm a movie fan.
it's a whole different feel and that vibe. Like, synthesized music, because you do hip hop. Synthesized music is a huge thing, but does it feel the same as the real instruments?
No, I do try. I trod into that water
Yeah.
cautiously because I love '80s synth pop.
I
like,
love synth too.
I love like Blade Runner and all that stuff. But for me, even that still, it's the performance,
Yeah.
right? So it's still the performance element. It's still the unknown of the live. You can't
You
duplicate
can't at all.
that environment. You know.
So when you think about it, that's how I like to think about it. Can you duplicate the experience, even though you're pirating whatever? Can you duplicate the experience that you would get? And the answer is no. There's no way to duplicate that type of experience. There's no way to duplicate the feeling you get from picking up a book for the first time, seeing those fresh pages and has that new book smell. You open it up and you start to flip through the physical pages. That's why we still have print books. Is that feel, There's no feel like you sitting down in the movie theater, you got your drink and your popcorn, maybe you got your girl beside you and
Right.
you got your arm around her, y'all watching a movie for the first time like, how do you duplicate that?
Right.
Even in your home, like, it might be the comfort of your own home, but your home doesn't have a screen that's, however big a movie screen.
Right,
I don't
they're
even
big.
know how big
They're
they are.
big.
Yeah,
They're
like,
big.
it doesn't have that. You might have the surround sound, but is it how theirs is set up? It's a whole different experience. And you can pirate music, but like you said, can you ever get that live feel if you're not there listening to a live band? Like, I've heard songs that were done phenomenally, I thought, recorded phenomenally to nothing but synthesized sounds. And then I heard it live, and I was like, I don't even
Well-
want to hear the other one anymore. But
Well, and every
it's just-
performance is an opportunity to do it different.
Yeah, and that's
Right,
the thing.
so your music can evolve. Like I said, I went and saw David Byrne last night. He did songs in the '80s that I loved, and now some of them were done with like Afro-Cuban or Zydeco or Latin music, and now or done with synthesizers.
Yeah.
And now they've taken on this whole other feel, and he's played them over decades, and every time he's
But
got a
he
different group of
changes it,
musicians,
yeah.
and it's a different opportunity to hear it a whole nother way, and maybe something he's heard in a different way.
Yeah, that's why Walter Murphy, even though he had the one successful song from his funk you know, his disco classical mashup album. Like, he's still a well-known composer for the sheer fact that he had that one, and now he works on Family Guy. You know,
Oh wow.
yeah, just for the sheer like Seth MacFarlane loved that one song so much. He's like, I want Walter Murphy.
That's my guy.
I want Walter Murphy.
Right, that's my guy.
And now, Family Guy's been on since what, '99? Got canceled for what, a year and a half, and they were like, you need to bring this back. Since '99, almost 20 years.
Wow.
You know, so stuff like that, like, it's just the feel, like that experience. You can duplicate Walter Murphy's sound, but that came from a beer. That's what's.
And that was a human investment, right?
Yeah.
So that was him saying, I want you to be a part of Family Guy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to invest in you because I like you.
Yeah.
So that goes right back to what you're talking about
Yeah.
is human investment. So we've probably been talking for who knows how long at this point. How can people keep track of what you're doing? How can people find you?
My phone number is public record. Like, don't call me like late at night. I'll probably be asleep. Like, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, like, my phone, I've begun to turn my phone ringer on. But like, come on, guys. Like, unless if somebody, is this an emergency? Because
Right.
if it is, you should probably call the police first. But you know,
But they can look you up in the phone book.
they can look me up, public record. But my Facebook, Jamaad Gould, I friend everybody. If I see we have mutual friends, or I think you're cool. Like, I don't know you, but whatever. Friend me on Facebook. We can have debates. I have debates on my Facebook all the time,
Yeah, I do too.
just for the fun of it. Follow my campaign page, of course, Jamaad Gould for Y Comico. And Twitter, Jamaad G.
We'll put the
Yeah,
link.
yeah. Twitter
Put links.
at Jamaad G. Like, it. I'm not big on social media because I think it takes away from.
Interaction.
Yeah, and I think people kind of have gotten away from that, and they kind of use social media as a crutch sometimes. But at the same time, I understand it's necessary, and I use it for its purpose. Like I said, I like to debate. I can have a debate with 100 people at one time
Right.
by putting something on Facebook, and you know, we all have different opinions. And I've had this talk with somebody that had an opposing view one day. I don't even remember what his viewpoint was, but I said, my Facebook page is a safe space. I said it because if somebody steps out of line and starts to be disrespectful, I'll check them before you have to say anything. I don't care what your viewpoint is. That's not the point of what I say.
Just as long as you don't get
yeah.
insulting.
Yeah, because I'm not an insulting person.
Right.
Like, I don't agree with Donald Trump. I just don't. I think most of his views are skewed tremendously. There's whole documentaries that show like he does not tell the truth, and that's an issue for me. Like, his ethics, in my eyes, are terrible. But if him and I were to sit down and have a conversation, I would ask him about that. I wouldn't be like, "Hey, Agent Orange," because as some people may call him, you know,
Right.
like what,
Don Cheetah.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be like that. I would be like, "Why do you think whatever is a good idea?
Right.
You know, why did you make that decision? You know, discuss it, and I hash it out. And if he feels like I'm attacking him by, you know, stating the opposite point, I'm sorry that you feel that way, because I'm not ever going to come off to people as disrespectful. One of my biggest things is respect. I respect everybody as long as they respect me.
We just need to find a way back to disagreeing.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like, me and my friends and I, we do it all the time. Like, we'll agree to disagree. That's just it. That's it. That's all.
Which means I'm going to go take this and bundle it up and take it home and think about it really, really a lot.
Either that, or it's like,
or
like,
let it go.
I went to college with this. It's a black Republican.
Yeah, that's
super
crazy.
rare. Like, super rare.
This is a unicorn.
Yeah, we would disagree all the time, and we would get into heated debates in the middle of like meetings or in my office or whatever. It didn't matter. At the end of the debate, we dap each other up and be like, "Hey, you want to go to Fridays, get some food, some drinks, and some
Right.
wings?" And he's like, "Sure." That's what we do. Like, he'd invite me out places. I invited him out places, you know. But because at the end of the day, my thing is, I'm a big spiritual person. And when I think of spirituality, and I think of our country as well, I think of our country has 3 inalienable rights, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Somebody can take your life at any moment.
Any moment.
Somebody can take your liberty for something you didn't do. You know, people get locked up for things they didn't do all the time. so they can take your liberty. How do you take somebody's pursuit of happiness?
Right.
You can never stop me from pursuing happiness or pursuing that overjoyous feeling that I get from being happy. I may never attain it, but you can't stop me from pursuing it.
Right.
You know, so like I hold my pursuit of happiness at such a high regard. Like that's what I do. I just try to live a happy life. If we don't agree on things, we don't agree on things. But if we can agree on other things, we can have a conversation about it. Let's talk.
Right.
It's just that simple to me.
Sounds right. Sounds about right to me. So this is the part I don't know about how to do is wrap up. I probably should have some wrap up or just have it awkward. We'll play music at this point.
Just play some jazz. Smooth jazz.